In the history of biogeography, we will be talking about that how scientists came to know about the ideas that how the different organisms that are living in different part of the world getting around in the world in the different part of the world. So the acceptance of evolution gave a new importance to the biogeography. The Darwin and Wallace they worked really hard on the idea of evolution, and gradually there were newer evidences, there were new fossil record, and a lot of other things that combined to give the evolution a good name, and it was accepted in the society. But the acceptance of the evolution posed new problems because there were different organisms that were living in the different part of the world which were not geographically connected. And until the mechanism of continental drift and plate tectonics were revealed. So this problem was solved once we knew about the continental drift or plate tectonics. So one continent there were some organisms living or some taxon were living. So when they separated, those taxon were still living on those two different plates, but now they were separated, and that was the confusion, right? So if our animals or organisms are having the same origin, they must be on the same place. The organisms were indeed on the same place. This place where they were living that was drifting apart, and that was the idea of continental drift. So this gave rise to the dispersalism, right? So earlier the scientists didn't know about that how continents were going away from each other, how the plate tectonics work, because the scientists that who are working on here, these are not geologists. These are the scientists who are studying zoogeography, or they are studying the paleontology. They are not geologists. So once they are not geologists, they cannot give an idea from the geology. That was the problem. So they were explaining things from a biological perspective. For example, if two plants are present on two different islands, they were explaining this by the seed dispersal, as we have seen in the previous topic. So dispersalism is when where a taxon or two related taxa are found on the either side of a barrier. That barrier can be a sea, ocean, a lake, maybe some other geographical. The mountains can be a barrier. So a barrier to the spread, and this is because they had been able to cross that barrier after it was formed. So it was an idea that the barriers are formed later, but the organisms crossed after the barrier was formed, and that was called dispersalism. That means dispersal is taking place. So, but it was inadequate to explain the pattern of distribution of past. So, how did the scientists work on it? Joseph Hooker, as we have discussed earlier, found these explanations quite unconvincing. Instead, he gave his ideas of narrow land bridges. He said that there are some uh, biological similarities in two regions, and there is a ocean. Say there is an ocean between them. The ocean at some point in time had some land bridges, and the organism were walking on those land bridges and going from one continent to another continent. So instead, the land bridges are by wider tract of dry land across the present South Atlantic and Indian Ocean. They were present, and in there, the organism were moving along. And that was not a plausible theory, but still the people believed in it. So this and what came the Hooker, why he said that, you can see the distribution of Glossopteris flora. These are the plants which are present in India as a fossil. You can see the shaded areas in the South America, in the South Africa, in the Australia, and to the other regions, just like in the Antarctica. So 300 million years ago existed in Africa, Australia, Antarctica, southern South America, and most surprisingly of all, India. So he said these plants were moved through the land bridges, maybe. And then comes the Alfred Wegener. He was the German meteorologist, And he, in 1912, he presented his theory of continental drift, in which Wagner stated that all of today's continent had originally been part of a single supercontinent, which is called Pangea. Pangea means, pan means all over, Gea means the earth. So all the continents are coalesced together to form a large piece of land, which is called Pangea. And here, how today's land masses were originally linked together to form a single supercontinent, Pangea, according to the Wegener. So here you can see that you can a little bit see the formation of Africa, and you can see the Asia. You can see a little bit of Mediterranean sea in there as well, South and North America, but whole thing is combined and coalesced together as a single form, which is Pangea. And there, the dispersalism was very popular belief, right? Wagner, not so popular because his ideas were coming from a rather different field. So the biologist, zoologist, the phytogeographist, all of those people were against those ideas because they were coming from a geologist. So they didn't. They believed that for uh, a biologist can better explain the fossil record of the animals or the plants as compared to a geologist. So they didn't believe in his ideas, and instead there are a lot of dispersalists. For example, Walter Matthew, he explained his ideas in his 1924 paper of climate and evolution. There was George Simpson, Carl Schmitt, George Myers, and Philip Darlington. He was a zoogeographer. So Philip Darlington was rather to make a large group of scientists, which is called the New York group of zoogeographists, who didn't believe in the continental drift or how the idea of Pangea, a large coalesced continent. So all of those people who are here, these were dispersalists, and the ideas will later change, and the geology will be established, and there will be much advanced theories about the continental drift, and the scientists will be explaining further these ideas in terms of geology as well.